There we go. There we go. Now we're live. What's up, business nerds? Happy, it's actually a Tuesday night, believe it or not. James, did you know that it was a Tuesday? Are you aware that it's a Tuesday right now?
Time's fluid. I never really know. I have to check the calendar every time,
That is,
frankly.
that is a good point. It is that fluid. I'm traveling tomorrow, so we're just doing a Tuesday night episode. I did the radio show earlier today, although it turns out after talking to Darren from Turfs Up Radio that whatever my setup is doing, somehow it used to work. Now it doesn't work anymore. And I'm just a damn bookkeeper, James. I don't know how the things connect with all the other things. It's just so much technology going on. But I do know how to do one thing, which is we're live on my personal Facebook page. We're live on the Best Damn Bookkeeping Facebook page. We're live on the LinkedIn, on the YouTube. I actually remembered. I'm like, you know how when you send emails and you forget to attach stuff probably half the time, and then you have to send the follow-up email like immediately after and be like, oops, forgot to attach stuff. I bat 500 with attachments. I also bat about 500 in remembering, like when I go live on StreamYard here, it automatically goes live to everywhere but Instagram. I have to remember to go onto Instagram and like hit one button to like allow it to go live. I remember maybe half the time. Sometimes halfway through the episode, I'm like, oh shit, I'll just punch it and whoever's on there can catch up later. So it's just the world we live in.
Yeah, so you basically have to give it authorization to do that. You're
Yeah.
500. Well, I mean, you're a Hall of Famer is another way to look at it.
That's what I'm saying. I feel like that's pretty good batting average.
Oh yeah.
Not bad.
Better than Ted Williams, man.
Yeah.
500.
It's unheard of. All right. I am doing the thing where I pin, if I can get my phone to work, I'm trying to pin my comment, but it's not working good because technology is just not my friend today. Come on, Facebook. All right, I'm just not even going to try to pin it. It's there. If you jump onto my personal page, folks, click the link to go to the Best Damn Bookkeeping page, because then when you comment, interact with James and I, ask questions, we can see it. We can put it on the screen. We can interact and bullshit. James, you got a Keystone Light over there. I'm pretty jealous of that. It's been a while since I had a Keystone Light.
Well, they're always smooth. That's the tagline. And I will say it is always smooth.
Still tastes like Keystone Light. I went with the tall Coors Lights. I got a couple on standby. I got the little mini desk fridge, the podcast fridge, ready to go.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like we're much classier version of like Mad Men, when they open up their desk and they got that bottle of liquor, except we're doing it with Coors Lights and Key Lights, and it's way classier that way.
Anybody can pull something room temp out of a drawer.
Yeah, exactly.
It takes way more thought and like visionary type of stuff to be able to have cold beer right away on hand.
Or like that episode of Seinfeld with Costanza. He's got the cooler built-in recliner thing. So
never gets old.
Summer of George, I think it was called.
Never gets old, man. Never gets old. How the heck is your Tuesday night going?
Oh, wonderful. Well, you said you were traveling later this week. So are we. We're heading to Charleston on Thursday for some business meetings, and then my birthday's Friday. So we're just going to roll into the weekend hard with a little beach trip. So
heck yeah. What do you got, like big plans, or you're just going to the beach, or what's on the agenda for the birthday?
We're going pretty low key this year. We're one of my wife's cousins has a place there, so we're just gonna pop in there. So nice and easy. Probably grab some really good, some food, some barbecue or something like that on St. John's Island or something, and then just hang out on the beach and do some day drinking. So that's about it. We'll probably have some more, Key Lights. Who knows?
If you can find them. Sometimes they're hard to track down. They can be hard to track down.
That's a good point. It's like the infamous Yinglings if you're outside of Pennsylvania. Tough to find sometimes, but
they can be. I had like one of those days where you're just like grinding all day, and then you're like, oh, family time, and then family time turned into like total chaos, as you could see with before we went live. My kids were just like ambushing the whole setup. Prior to that, my 3-year-old tried to take a leak. He's not quite tall enough to like pee standing up into the toilet, but I appreciate that he's like determined. He did declare, and maybe one of the funniest things he's ever said, he's like, I just need my penis to be longer. Exact quote like 20 minutes ago. because he was trying to pee over the toilet seat, but then it like he was on his tiptoes, and I don't know exactly how it happened. I wasn't there for the moment that the chaos like got created, but his pee shot up over the toilet and onto the wall behind the toilet, and then was running down the wall. And then he proceeded to pee all over the back of the toilet and everywhere. And my wife was just like, "This is a you problem now." So that was me 10 minutes before you and I just got here, just cleaning up 3-year-old pee almost all over the bathroom.
That's awesome. That's always fun. It's always a gem whenever you go into a restaurant. Or my middle school had the floor urinals, and I always thought they're the coolest because then you can back up 10 feet and just see if you can launch it.
Yeah.
But you don't see them very often anymore, so it's disappointing. So I always thought if I ever built a house or anything like that, then it's a must-have to a floor urinal.
Especially with little kids. That's a good point. Yeah, maybe the price of porcelain was just going through the roof, and they were like, we need to make a smaller, we can't afford all this porcelain to go top down. We got to like just have a little insert in the wall.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or they go with the metal trough. When in doubt, stainless steel trough, ball game style.
Yeah. Well, it's probably from, big porcelain, those lobbyists in DC, they're just, they're hiking the prices for porcelain these days. I guarantee it.
That's what it is. Big porcelain.
Yeah.
Everybody's talking about it. Talking about it. The tariffs. It was the tariffs, man.
Porcelain. Yeah, exactly.
How are you gonna get your hands on some porcelain? How's like the spring going for you? Do you we're gonna get into a bunch of acquisition stuff. James, let's do this right away.
Sure.
Give us your last name, and are you 100% Polish or just 99% Polish?
Great question. My last name is Gorzynski. I spared you on the screen there, but I'm actually almost as much Italian as I am Polish, and I'm Austrian and a little bit of German too. But so I tan kind of like an Italian on my mom's side, and then I sweat like a Polak, and I think like one too, I guess.
Yeah, I think I just got all the Polish. My dad was looking into our last name, and he said somewhere along the lines it got changed. It used to be one T, now it's 2 T's, and I know there had to be a ski at the end of it. It had to be Platoski at some point. Like we're mostly Polish. It's mostly Polish. I don't know. They maybe like drop that off to blend in at some point. They're like, let's just drop the ski and we'll see if we can like act, German or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I got a funny story. I was at I was on a cruise one year. This is probably 10 years plus. And I was dancing on the dance floor, and
that's a good woman spot to dance. That's like most people will do that.
Oh, I know. It's crazy. I was really taking some risks. A woman came up to me and said, "Are you Polish?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "I can tell because you're the worst possible dancer I've ever seen, but you go out with such vigor."
Just owning it. Yeah, just owning it.
Never had that experience before.
I was gonna say, like, was that just one of those compliments or degradations where you're like, thanks?
It was a compliment for sure. She loved it, and then we danced for a while together, so it turned out just fine. But
there you go. I can relate to that. It's my vibe. Yeah. It's my vibe. It's one of those things too when you're just like a white dude and you're like, well, I know I suck at dancing, so I'm just gonna go full speed at sucking at dancing so that everybody knows I'm just confident. I'm confident in my skin. I'm just going hard.
Oh, 100%. I had a dance off about 15 years ago with a bartender. She went around the bar, and then we had a dance off in the middle of the actual bar, and it cleared the whole dance area. So that was another.
Was there a vote, or was it just done before it even started?
We ended it with her. Neither of us communicating, and we just randomly came together, and she jumped on me and I just caught her, and then we just both celebrated collectively, and then the whole bar just went nuts. Like it was
everybody won the dance off.
It was kind of like a Will Ferrell kind of moment, I would say, or at least that's how it felt at the time. Maybe it was just maybe my beer vision, and it was nothing like that, and we just biffed it and fell on the floor. I don't know.
Hey, the memory is what matters. It is what you think it was. It's yours. It's your story. It's your memory. You get to make it whatever you want. That's the beauty.
Yeah. Well, my buddies corroborated it, so I think it's true. Who knows?
There you go. Everybody was hitting them Keystone Lights. Everybody had the same remembrance or a version of the next morning.
Yeah. Well, I remember part of the reason was that it was well night, 50-cent well night. So that'll get you pretty quickly.
That will get you. Just drinking a bunch of like Windsors and Cokes.
Yeah, pretty much. It was a ridiculous deal they did on, I think, Wednesday nights, something of that nature. And then I think Tuesday nights were like $5 tray nights at this place. So they had some pretty awesome deals.
They just keep you coming back.
Yeah.
They just rotate it so that you don't get burned out. They just keep you coming.
Was there a spot you would go to that was the spot for the deals if you were tight on cash?
Yeah, I mean, especially in college, you always had like the spot that you go to because you're always tight on cash. Like you weren't, nobody's rolling in it. My like the most memorable one was there was a bowling alley, and this is like spoken like a true finance dude, where like I'm always trying to get the most for my money. They had Wednesday nights, $1 bowling, $1 beers, $1 burgers. And so like we'd go and usually bowl 3 games. And I'm from Wisconsin, so I just would buy a pitcher of beer for $5. Sure. And then sometimes I would have 2. Just depended on the night, depended on if I had like an exam, on Thursday or whatever was going on. But the $1 bowling, $1 burgers, $1 beers was pretty damn tough to beat. Nostalgia.
That's awesome. Yeah, I was always a sucker for the $1 beer night or any type of 25-cent wing night or something like that. Anything like that would lure me in pretty easily.
Yep. Yeah, I'm a sucker for beer and a deal. And if you combine both, it's hard to keep me out of there.
Absolutely.
What give us a little background on you. Like like you got a finance background, you do M&A sorts of stuff, but you're a normal dude. And I feel like that's like this puts you and I in a weird threshold in any respect, is that we're both finance dudes and we're not boring and lame finance dudes. And that's hard to find sometimes. So I'm curious, like, was this a path you saw yourself going down? Where did you go to school for this stuff? Was it something you came into later, or did you always feel like the numbers and the finances and whatever else was your jam, and you're still running into that jam?
Yeah, I was always good with numbers and definitely was always curious. So I remember talking to good old Pops when I was younger and always asking a million questions. So I think he's a retired CPA. So, that was always something of interest for me, but I really wanted to work in more strategy. So I kind of moved into more of the fractional CFO realm for a while. And then I was in data analytics for a bit, but once I didn't know what M&A and brokerage was. And frankly, if I did, I probably would have went at it much sooner if I knew it, because I just love it. I think it's cool. Definitely don't like being boring. So I pretend that I'm professional during the day, but in reality, I'm just a Western Pennsylvania redneck at heart. So, I think it's so much more fun to live life that way. So, I think the cool thing about numbers is you can just kind of leverage it to make better decisions, and it doesn't have to be boring, so that's one thing that you can use your money for, or to spend more time with family, or go on some awesome trips, or I don't know, go shoot some clay pigeons at the range, or we're doing a golf tournament later this year. I'm going to do a clay shoot, stuff like that. So you can always have fun working the numbers. So
heck yeah, everything is numbers. Everything is numbers.
Technically, we're living in the matrix. It's just one big sequence of zeros and ones anyway.
This is true.
You could translate it all to the zeros and ones if you had to. So I just did a discussion about it actually with the exit planning exchange a couple days last week. We did a whole topic on just enough data, kind of around that same thing. So it was pretty cool. We had a whole interaction with 25 folks talking about data and all that kind of stuff. So we were kind of nerding out, but it was a blast.
When you say exit planning, I want you to like frame that up for us.
Sure.
Because I think a lot of folks, start their businesses and they just do. I don't think this. I know this because I watch them do it. And I do the books for them. They start their business because they're like, I'm a guy that had a mower and I mowed lawns, and I mowed more lawns than I needed help. So I hired people, and now I have a business that mows lawns. Or I had a pressure washer and then I washed something, and then I had too much to wash, so I hired people. And a lot of folks get into the business and go, oh shit, like I was just the dude or the gal that was doing the thing, and then it turned into a business and my world has changed. Like, of all the people that you work with, How many even have an exit plan? How many have thought have an exit plan? Is it like 50-50, or is it like most are surprised when that's a thing they should even consider?
I'd say it's 96 to 98% don't have an exit plan or don't know what it is when I talk about it. If we're talking about folks that do less than 20 million, the idea of exit planning's been around forever, and it's really designed for 50 million to $500 million companies. But I love small business, and that's how I grew up. So I'm trying to bring all that down to the smaller businesses. I think small businesses are underdogs, and I'm a sucker for that. One of my favorite movies is Miracle. Makes me cry, man, like that kind of stuff. Beating the Russians, heck yeah. So
now they have to make a Miracle 2.0, beating the Canucks.
Yeah, exactly. So that was pretty cool, recently with that happening, but almost none really think about it. And I think that's what I really want to change. I'd love to reverse that statistic where everyone's thinking about the end. Doesn't mean you're selling your business now. It just means you know how to do it and you're aware of it and you're making better decisions along the way. And that's where the real value comes in. And in my opinion, the easiest way to kind of convey it is it's just like you're staging a house. If you're going to sell your house and you want to throw some paint on it, increase the value a little bit. But if you really want to make some major improvements, maybe you're, you have an unfinished room over the garage or an unfinished basement. But if you convert that to heated square footage, now we're talking about hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars on the sale price. Like that's what exit planning is. It's basically strategy, like staging a house for a sale, but just a lot more variables, obviously. And the foundational piece is bookkeeping and looking at your numbers. So it's the easiest way to increase the value, frankly.
I was going to say I've got two different questions here, and I wasn't sure which way to go with it. But you gave me the transition here, which my question was going to be, what's the if there was a thing that somebody should be doing, thinking about, structuring for like a maximizing the value of their business, what is it? Is it the books? Is it revenue? Is it sales? Is it employees? Like what's the main driver, main thing they should be focusing on to consider a high value exit, or as high of a value as they can get anyway?
Yeah, I'd say anytime I work on an exit plan, I essentially rank them and assign a range of value sequentially from a prioritization. But the top three are easily books. Get your financials clean, make sure they make sense. And if they're not in line with other companies of your size, that's okay. Maybe there's a reason for it, but at least you now know why, and you're aware of your margins and you can explain it. And there's a narrative. When you go in with confidence with talking to a buyer, it changes everything. Like when someone has a nice clean data room with information and they're going to sell their business and, we're brokering a deal and, the buyer goes into the data room and they see everything nice and clean and tidy. Like it's just like going into a clean office or a clean house, which is easy for me to say. My office isn't always perfectly tidy, frankly, but that's the general concept there. And then the other thing is for sure owner dependency. You want to be. There's a lot of pride with being a business owner. I know I felt it. I sold my business several years ago, but the less you're needed, the more valuable it gets, and it's reflected on that service or on that sales price. Excuse me. So that's the other thing that I see a lot where people are prideful for being involved in the business, but the more structure you have, the more valuable it is and the more transferable. So, people are willing to pay for that. And, the other cool part about that is if the business is less dependent on you, the owner, then maybe you don't want to sell. Like we worked with a company that was worth about $600K. And after 3 years, they were worth around 4.8 million. And the guy said, why sell?
Yeah. Why sell now? I got this thing that does great.
Yeah. He was in his early 40s and he's riding it out. He's cool. Like he's making a lot of money. He doesn't need to sell. But now he knows how to do it and he's prepared. So like, that's the cool stuff about, doing this early on. And then the other thing is one that folks don't think about is, a CRM or digital, SOPs, massive. A lot of times people are like, oh yeah, I know the process and we're awesome at execution. And you might have this tribal knowledge, with your team. That's awesome. But if you don't have it documented, then it's pretty hard to transfer it to a buyer. And then the transition period is super messy. And then a lot of times there's a bunch of contingencies in the sale, and now maybe you have to pay some of that money back, or some of it's forgivable during the sale. So it's not like you have a sale price of X, Y, and Z and you get 100% of that close. It's pretty common to have contingencies or liabilities, or a seller note, or earn out, or something else. So, if you want to get what you actually sold it for, you might want to think about that as well. So those are the top three easily.
When you look at like the spectrum of businesses for sale or that may get sold, do you have like groupings or buckets that you put them in? For instance, like, oh, you've got the business with the owner engaged and, they're less than $1 million. They got a couple trucks or whatever it is. And that has a certain vibe to it. And then maybe there's the one where they have the full team, but they're still the CEO of the business and engaged. And maybe there's a revenue level or profit level with that. Are there like structures that you guys put them into buckets in of like, oh, you're in this phase. Oh, you're in this phase. And then you see the multiple like go up, and it's very predictable of, if you're in this phase, here's kind of what you're looking at for who a reasonable buyer is, a type of valuation that, you're not going to look at EBITDA because you're selling it as like an asset sale, as a client list, and maybe a couple trucks or something like that. And like the way you value changes as the business dynamic changes. How do you guys look at it in terms of that, like bucketing of the type of business that might be for sale?
Yeah, there's different. I think what you're asking is about maturity level, right? Like, so there's definitely
I don't know what I'm asking. That's why it was such a shitty question. I was hoping you would like be able to tell me what I'm trying to ask, but
it
makes sense.
Oh yeah. You just opened the world to basically serenity for eternity. Like, that was the most profound question ever. So it worked out great. Yeah.
Great hosting.
No, yeah, there's definitely levels of maturity, I would say, with each type of business. And what's cool about it is you can structure things differently based on the maturity level and still achieve a decently high sale price, but you just have to be flexible as well. So, as an example, maybe you are fairly dependent as the owner, but maybe you have a pretty long exit runway or timeline, then, or exit window, we call it any of those a lot of times, then you can structure a deal where you phase out your time, and maybe you can still capture more, the same amount as if you weren't as involved, and less owner dependent and more mature. So there's a lot of cool things that you can do with the structure side. And that's where strategy really comes in with, how to do that properly, and then also mitigate risk and, not fall into any of the common traps. Like there's like anything else, there's balance to it. I was talking to a guy the other day that sold this company to private equity, and he's on a 3.5-year hook, on the back end. And if you're trying to phase out and you're like retiring, like that might be fun for you. You might want that. And for him, he was a little bit younger, in his 50s, and he was rolling his sale into his next chapter, into his next venture. So for him, it was preventing him from moving into that next phase, because he was going to have maybe one more chapter before retirement, if you had to kind of quantify it. So it really pissed him off. So you really got to think about the personal side. So anytime I'm talking to anyone who's thinking about selling or, implementing an exit plan, you got to think about it from three primary perspectives, or what I call them the golden pillars. The first one is the personal pillar. So why are you doing what you're doing? Usually it's for your family or yourself, or, your community, or all of the above. And then you got your business pillar, which is usually the one you're hyper focused on, which makes sense. How do we accelerate the growth there and sell it for the most and the best terms for the least amount of taxes, all that. And then the final one is the retirement and, financial plan pillar. So, if you're looking at all three and you align all three, then you got yourself a successful exit plan. At least you know what you're going to do. And then I guarantee you it'll change, but at least you've gone through it, and then you can, massage it over time. And as it evolves, you can just adjust it basically. So that's kind of the general concept of it.
Is there a scale of like who the right buyer potentially is? For instance, like, oh, you're less than $1 million, your best buyer is probably somebody that is like in the industry just trying to like scoop up your assets in a client list. Hey, you're 1 to 2 million, your best buyer is probably somebody that's not in the market, and you have enough infrastructure that they'd want to buy your thing and will pay you good because they don't already run the type of business you want that you run. Oh, you're over 3 million. Now, if you can get to 5, maybe it's private. Like, are there buyers where when a seller comes to you and says, hey, James, I'm thinking about selling, I want to sell, do you immediately be like, okay, like here's the pool of people that would be interested and that we should start talking to, and it's not private equity or it's not these guys because they won't pay you the most money? Do you have like buyers in mind or groups of buyers for potential exits?
Yeah, absolutely. Kind of categorize them. So private equity is a general term, but then, you have smaller private equity firms, then you have family offices or smaller investment firms or smaller partnerships. And they're basically just a mini private equity firm. And then you have closely held family offices. And then below that, there's partnerships, usually they're family related as well, which can get confusing with what I just mentioned. But, there might be two business partners that are working together. There's individuals, and then of course there's kind of searchers and search funders, they're called, or sponsor relationships. But whenever we're going through like a exit plan and talking to a seller, we effectively go through your top 3 ideal buyer personas or profiles. So essentially we say, hey, this is your top person. And usually that's a mirror image of themselves. Usually, not always, but a lot of times that's the easiest place to start. So we'll target them first, but there might be a second or third. And then, that usually falls into one of those other categories. So yeah, 100%, you can kind of quantify them. And there's some other nuanced terms for it, but generally those are kind of the ways to look at it. But it also depends on what you value. So we sold a company that was around for 70 years last year. So third owner, that's hopefully they're going to make it to 100 years. And I think they will. So 3 owners in 100 years, which would be pretty cool.
That's wild.
But they did not want to sell the private equity. So when we went through that exercise, they're like, hey, we value a purchase price, but we'll take a 5% or 10% discount. We want the business to carry on. And so that was very important from a legacy perspective, instead of rolling it up under a big private equity firm and being their employees maybe being at risk. So that's who we targeted. It took longer. We turned down 3 full price offers in that case, but we found the right buyer, and they're kind of best friends now. So it's one of those things where if you know what you want, you just go after it. It's kind of that simple, but you're trading time. It's always time versus money every time.
This is an observation I've had, but I don't know if it's like, if my pool is small and so it's just the world that I live in that I've seen. It seems to me like if you end up selling to somebody that's already in the space that you're in, you tend to get a lower value because they already have the infrastructure and the training and the systems and processes, and they want your clients and your employees, but they don't need your brand per se. Yeah, it's additive, but it's maybe not as valuable as somebody. And I've like watched this happen a couple times, which is why I'm asking, where it's like, if somebody isn't a window cleaning company, but they want to get into the space, it seems like they're willing to pay more because they need more of your stuff. They need more of your infrastructure. It's not just a client acquisition cost to them. Is that fair to say, or am I like making it too simple?
No, I'd say most acquisitions under 10 million, and that's accurate. They know what they know already, and so they're less willing to take the risk, and generally, and they don't, to your point, need the infrastructure, and so they view it more transactional in a way, and then they're going to roll it up under their brand probably anyway. So yeah, that is fairly accurate. And then also, especially if you have a new business buyer that is reading something online like, oh, buy a business for no money down, and they're all excited, looking at all these buyer programs and all that stuff, like they get all jacked up and they're like, all right, I just want to buy a business, and then they're willing to pay more than maybe they should in some cases. So there's a little bit of that involved too. So we run into that a decent amount. But if you find that right buyer, then it's still a good situation. They're buying a solid business, they're willing to pay for it. But there is the only caveat to that is with some of the larger businesses that, maybe you're doing 10, 15 million, and a private equity wants to buy a business, and those are called strategic buyers, where they might want to complement their business, and day one, they're adding it onto their existing pipeline. And they know that because of the existing synergy, which that word's fun to say, but like, what does it really mean? But
Yeah.
like, they know that there's a ton of money going to the bottom line because they already have a cohesive pipeline that fits. Then they will overpay on purpose because they want it bad enough, especially if it's a very niche market for something. So, that's the other side of that coin that happens occasionally as well.
Get some economies of scale going with it.
Yeah, exactly. So stuff like that.
Speaking of economies of scale, Rob Anderson chimes in, wants to know how's the beer. Rob, we got a light beer fiesta going on over here. We got Keystone Lights, we got Coors Lights. It's light beer in the house. Light beer Tuesday, baby. Taco Tuesday, light beer Tuesday. It's a good day. God, what was I gonna say? I had something, and then Rob had to mention the beers, and that gets me distracted. I get excited.
Classic Rob, that's what he does in every room.
Rob's the honorary co-host of this show. He might I don't think I sent him the link tonight, but he will jump in. He'll be like, hey, if he's available, hey, drop me in. But with those exits, and I think where my mind was going, you already said this, and maybe I'm just bringing it full circle, is there's the trade-off of time and money. And it seems like if you're in a hurry to sell your business, selling it to somebody in the industry seasonally at the right time, like it's hard to sell them a business in the springtime if they're window cleaning, like you probably needed to sell it in the winter, or maybe in the summer when there's a little bit of a slowdown. But you get less, but it happens faster, versus if they're not in the industry, it takes a little bit longer. There's more due diligence. They have a lot more questions because they don't know what they're getting into. So they're way more curious and trying to set stuff up. Is that, I got another comment I got to hear, but is that like an observation that you have? Is that kind of what goes along with the change in the values?
Yeah, I agree. If they're more familiar, they're going to move faster through due diligence. So just like a house, you have a due diligence period where you would do the inspections. Well, if they're familiar with your industry, they're going to move quicker through it. But the one thing I would say is that I wouldn't get under that false comfort blanket there, because everything takes way longer than you want it to, no matter what you want or whatever you think. You have attorneys involved that, frankly, not trying to pass judgment on all attorneys, but 80% of them are just trying to close the transaction. So it's more of a you really need to think about the timeline and set reasonable expectations. I always rather set reasonable and beat the goal than to press it too much and be disappointed, that kind of thing. So I think that's another thing to be really aware of. If you're trying to go to market and you don't know the buyer already, the average business sale is 9.5 months for everyone, to kind of keep in mind. But I love reverse engineering things. So like if you want to sell in 10 years and you want a 1-year transition and it's going to take 1 year to sell, you have 8 years to do some exit planning and move towards that exit. And then you just kind of revise it every year. And the closer you get, the more you can hone it in. But, you just got to be careful with having those unreasonable expectations of time. And then the holidays, oh boy, it's hilarious around Thanksgiving and Christmas, people trying to take a square peg and put it in a round hole. Like people are just out of the office.
Close it before the end of the year. Why? Yeah. Because it's the end of the year.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. 12/31. And then half the time I'm like, well, we can just kick that. We do January 1, we can kick that tax bill, and you got 365 days to plan for that a little bit. So why don't you do that? So sometimes it's like, all right, let's think big picture here.
Yeah. Speaking of thinking big picture, Justin Noggles in the house. Good to hear from you, Justin. He said, my goal is to catch walleyes in a canoe. What multiple does that require? And I think it's a trick question, because I believe the answer is multiple. You get 2 rods out, you could get a double. Pretty sure Justin and I were in a canoe last year in the Boundary Waters up by Canada, and we got a double. So I think that's the multiple. Now, if we got a triple, that would probably be a problem, because there's only 2 of us. I don't know how we would handle that. I would say 2. The right multiple is 2. It's just straight math, man. This is easy math. This is an easy one. I can handle that one.
Oh, heck yeah.
It's kind of like 2 beers. You got 2 hands, multiple 2.
Yeah, but then you could have the beer hat though.
Could go 4.
Yeah, just saying. It depends. It depends how skilled you are with those. I'm not. I used to play in a kickball tournament called Cup in Hand, where you had to hold a beer the whole time. And
sounds like my type of kickball league.
Yeah, I thought you might like that. Well, hey, if you have the skill set, maybe you can do 3. Who knows? Maybe 4. We'll see.
I two comments to what you said there. I bought, so like we have a pool in our backyard, and I was like, oh, a beer helmet would be just awesome to be like wearing around by the pool, especially when I'm like cleaning the pool, because I want to sip a beer, but your hands are tied up and you're like vacuuming the bottom pool or whatever. It just doesn't taste good through those straws. I washed the hell out of them. It just wasn't. I didn't expect it to taste as chemically as it did. I could not get them to not taste different. So I abandoned the beer helmet. Seemed like a good idea at the time. Kickball, the worst injury I've ever had. And I've got this pinky that is a football.
Oh yeah. Okay.
I've got it actually comes in super handy for drinking a beer. It just creates this nice little shelf on the bottom.
Yeah, the shelf.
Like it's perfect. I got that. I got bad ankles. My shoulder got separated playing high school football. The worst injury I ever got, kickball. Rounded first base. And I'm still pretty fast. I was racing my kids the other day. I was like, I think I'm still sub 540. I think I'm like 4.8 still. I used to be like the 4.6, 4.7. I wasn't like the fastest guy in the world, but I can wheel and deal.
Yeah.
I was rounding first base. I kicked that ball, son of a bitch, and way out, like probably ground root double. Probably would have bounced over the fence. Thing was long gone. But I'm hauling. I'm going for the into Parker. You know, I want to into Parker.
Yeah.
Very bald shoes. That was a mistake. Didn't have cleats on. I was just running some Pumas that were like worn down through the rubber to the whatever the white surface is between the sole.
Yeah. The secondary rubber.
Somebody that makes shoes, chime on in here. The felt, the cushion, the foam. It's foam, some kind of foam. Anyway, I'm wheeling, dealing on my foam on my Pumas, and I round first base. And you would have thought like I slipped on a banana peel. My legs are straight out to the side, like just straight out to the side. And that infield, that wasn't sand. That was gravel. That son of a bitch. My whole left side was just gone. Like my whole left side of my leg was just raw, blood everywhere, dirt in it because I'm on a ball field. And I don't know what I was thinking. I was like in my low 20s and I tried to clean the hell out of it. I mean, like it looked like I had a motorcycle accident. I mean, like my whole leg was raw. I'm just that fast, James. I was that fast. Oh, yeah. That's what I'm telling myself.
It might be a road rash, that Sega game on the going near the
it's
pavement.
Just like that. It was just like that. But I was in the game. I was in there. And I stupidly, I would like got hydrogen peroxide and rubbing alcohol like mixed up in my mind. And so I didn't put hydrogen peroxide on it. I dumped rubbing alcohol on it. And I had to grab the towel off the handbar and put it in my mouth and just like scream into the towel. And like, but I have never that. And then like that the whole wound got infected. And my brother luckily is like medically smart and is a doctor and does nerdy stuff like that. I'm just the numbers guy, but he's actually like takes care of people. And he's like, man, you need to go in now. Like if that thing gets infected, like they will be taking your leg. Like this isn't a joke. You have an open wound that is like 2 square feet. Like get your ass into the doctor's office. So I did, and they gave me like shots and medicine, and I'm alive. And I have some of my leg hair back. Some of my leg hair came back there. So
yeah,
I got that going for me.
I have a couple spots on my legs from sports injuries as well that are from I've torn the skin off so much it doesn't even grow back the way it should anymore. So similar to that, not 2 feet worth of road rash, but man, that sounds painful. I do remember when I was playing, I think it was softball, where they had some policy where if you were bleeding, like you couldn't bat. And I remember I had slid into, or I had done something, and then I was up to bat again because somebody was out, or I don't remember why I was batting so quickly after. But I went up and the ump said like, "Hey, you can't bat like that. You're bleeding." So I don't know why, but I instinctively just grabbed a bunch of dirt and threw it on and rubbed it in. And I was like, that was the worst thing in the world. So now I had pebbles and dirt just rubbed into the wound. And he's like, "What are you doing, man? Like, you're just a complete idiot." I'm like,
beer league, baby.
Pitch
beer league. Pitch that damn ball.
Yeah. I'm not thinking about that. I'm trying to win. What are you doing?
Yeah. Throw some dirt on it. Where did you grow up? Where I came from, we throw dirt on it. That's what we do.
Yeah, exactly.
And then we regret it later. But it seemed like a good idea at the time. You know. What? So let me hit you with this. From an exit standpoint, is there like we're all in our world running our businesses, and some businesses are going to get bigger than others. like, is there a destination? If we intend on exiting the business, is there a level to hold out to where it's like, man, if you can just get it here, it's that much more valuable? Is it not worth holding on to? Is there a level where you're going to say, why don't you just keep running this thing? Like how as we're growing our business and scaling our business and thinking about where we go and what the point of it all is. And I'm actually recording a podcast with a buddy tomorrow on what the point of it all is. So we're going there anyway. But how are you working with your clients to like help them see that or coach them through that?
Yeah, I would say that I look at it from a risk perspective, which is the part that's hard to quantify sometimes. So, a lot of times I think of Blockbuster, they were flying high for a while. And, this little old company called Netflix started mailing out DVDs and people started using it, but they weren't really paying attention. Blockbuster didn't really change their model and their stock was pretty high at that point. And then they kind of crashed and burned pretty quickly after things changed very, very fast. So the way I look at it is, again, just leveraging statistics. The average business owner has 80% of their wealth tied up in their business, which is one stock. Technically, they have stock in the company. That's a high risk asset. So for me, it's like, how do you diversify that? If you are the way I would normally look at it is, okay, how much do you need for your cost of living? And then all the surplus should be going into de-risking by leveraging other products, whether that's insurance or throwing money into an IRA or buying stock in another company that your buddy's running that wants to grow. Like you can do it a lot of different ways, but the key there is going at what makes sense for you. I shouldn't be trying to do other things that I have no interest or comfort in, so it's also going to have to overlay with your exit timeline, like we talked about. So like if you're close to retirement, I would be selling soon because you need to get rid of that stock. And then you can put it into a ETF or something else that's completely diversified and it'll grow at roughly the 8 to 12% S&P. And so you're diversifying that way, so there's a lot of ways to do it. But I love looking at the risk side because that's the part that people kind of forget about. And if you're younger, then you have a higher risk tolerance, just like anything else. You have more time to make up for mistakes.
You're wearing your worn out Pumas rounding first base at 1 billion miles an hour. You don't give a shit.
Exactly. You're going at it. You're taking risks. You're diving. For the ball. You're making some mistakes. That's okay. So I think that's the way I would probably look at it if it was me in their shoes. So yeah. I'm trying to open people's eyes more, and then we kind of talk it through.
Does that change or feel different if it's like a married couple and they're working on the same business versus one of the spouses is running the business and maybe the other spouse? And I'm asking for me because this is my situation. It's like I've got my business. My wife works at 3M, got the cushy corporate job, which I think it's as risky as anything, especially in today's age. Like, who knows? They can change their minds about you tomorrow and you're gone. So we've talked about, like, would it make sense for her to join Best Damn Bookkeeping and help me grow this thing? She's a powerhouse. We'd grow like crazy. We already are growing like crazy. I don't know how we'd even handle like growing twice as fast as we are. But does that change it then from an exit planning? Like, now you're twice as risky, I assume, because you've got all your eggs in one basket. How do you look at a married couple running a business together versus like it's only a piece of their puzzle?
It goes back to personality. I work with my wife, so we're in a high risk profile, frankly. I'm a risk taker naturally. I think that I really like going after what makes me happy. So, if that's and the compounding effect there is what you're kind of talking about. Yeah, it is riskier maybe, but maybe not. Like you guys maybe can grow it twice as fast and people are going to resonate with the husband-wife duo. Like I know people do with us. So it's just like, okay, if you can grow it faster and bring in more income and then diversify it faster, there's nothing wrong with that. That's you, do you basically. So I don't think there's anything wrong with it, but I do think you have to be aware of that risk and then also have contingency plans or a backup plan if things go sideways a little bit. But yeah, that's how I would look at it. But I think, it's kind of funny how often you talk to someone and they're like, that was the best thing that happened to me. And I thought it was the worst at the time. That happens all the time. So it's just like, okay, you'll rebound, as long as you're a good person and you're trying your best, people are going to feel that authenticity, I think. And I think that's what people really want. So that's how I think about it.
All right. authenticity and risky takes me to a specific set of questions. And maybe it's just one question. What's more risky? Telling your wife, hey, I'm going to be gone for 2 weeks in September out elk hunting out west. Or, hey, FYI, I'm gone with my buddies this weekend for 4 days, going to Lake Erie walleye fishing. 2 weeks, 4 days. One's like right now, hey, this weekend you got the kids, I'm gone. Or, hey, you got all the time in the world to plan for me being gone for 2 weeks. In the mountains, you won't even hear from me. Maybe I'll hit you with my sat phone. What's more risky?
I think the short-term one, if you're throwing that dice on the table like last second, that would be riskier with my wife for sure. But I don't think she would care as much about the 2-week thing because she would have enough time to plan for it. She's naturally a planner. I'm not as much. So I like the adventure of things. So, and I grew up on Lake Erie. So, that it's like, hey, I'll just go up there and wing it. Whatever. We're good.
That I have found this to be true. I found this to be true in business. I found it to be true in my marriage. is I do this with pricing. When I have a demo with a client, I go through the pricing. And I say this pricing matrix changes once a year, and we're going to change the matrix, and we're going to change your price, and we're going to remeasure your data because like the square footage of your business that we have to deal with is going to change. So once a year, we look at the world and say, what does our pricing matrix need to be competitive in the world and pay the right wages and charge a fair price and all that stuff. And I've always found, and I learned this in maid service businesses, we would wait like 3 years sometimes to change our prices. And our clients in that business would never say, hey, Dan, thank you. I appreciate the discount over the last 2 years of you not changing my price. Thanks for holding my price steady in the massive discount you gave me. No, they would always say, how dare you raise my price? I've been such a loyal client. Why would you raise my price? And I'm like, oh, like you clearly don't know how the world works. I gave you a discount for the last 2 years, and now you're like mad that now I'm catching up. I should go back and re-invoice you for like how much I should have been charging you. So I like learned that lesson, but I also learned like you got to tell people from day one. And the same thing happens with our wives, which is if my wife has informed me that this is totally okay, as long as it's out there, it's future Marty's problem. Right now, Marty doesn't have to deal with it. Future Marty has to deal with it. And she'll be like, oh, cool. Yeah, my mom will help. We'll bring the kids over to Jenna's house or sister's house, whatever the case is. But it's future Marty's problem at that point. So she's fine. But if it's like, hey, next week I'm going to be gone and this is what I'm going to be doing, then now we got a problem. Now we got a problem on our hands.
Well, that reminds me of, Sunday James during football season does not care about Monday James at all. He really does.
I know that guy. I got one of those guys.
Yeah, he does not care at all. And especially if my team's playing on Monday night, he does not care about Tuesday morning James either. So, it's one of those things.
You're a Pittsburgh guy?
Yeah, I'm a Steelers fan. About a third of my friends were Bills fans, a third were Browns, a third were Steelers. So we were all kind of fighting with each other over who's better. Obviously the Steelers, but I'm hoping the Bills can get a win here soon. And Browns are just lost. So whatever.
Yeah, the Browns, give them 20 more years. They'll figure something out, and then they'll do a Deshaun Watson thing, and they'll suck. And they'll like the minute they look like they could be good, they'll do Brown stuff.
We'll have another 50 quarterbacks.
The Bills. It's just got to be such like I'm a Packer fan from Wisconsin, and like, we have some painful moments where we've been like elite but didn't do what we should have done, and but we've got some Super Bowls. Got 2 in my lifetime. I'm feeling all right about that. Sorry about 2010. Sorry about that one. But
so close. That was a good game.
That was a hell of a game.
Yeah.
Could have went either way.
It really could have. Really could have.
It was just a flip. But the Bills, it's like, man, why can't they? They haven't been able, like Jim Kelly and Thurman Thomas. They just haven't. They just never. It just doesn't happen for them. I don't understand it. It's like they're there. They were right there. They're always right there.
Statistically, how 4 straight? Like that's insane to start with, and they didn't get 1. Like that's nuts to me. Mm-hmm. Absolutely nuts. But
I don't understand it. Who knows? And like now they've got every piece of the puzzle. They've got what they need. They just can't get over the hump. There's always like one team in their way. The Chiefs, who got them this year? Was it Texans knock them out? Who knocked them out this year?
I forget. Yeah, I guess it was the Texans. Yeah, it wasn't the Chiefs. So yeah, I guess it must have been. Yeah, I don't know. I forget, but
who the hell was even in it from the AFC? I know it was Seattle versus somebody. Oh, the Patriots freaking won it this year. The Patriots knocked them out. I think the Patriots knocked the Bills out. I think. Somebody chime in the comments. Somebody knows what's happening.
Yeah.
Here's one back to business stuff. I'm curious about this because so this is my second bookkeeping business. I had one as part of like a family of companies. We had window cleaning companies, pressure washing, window cleaning, maid services. And then I accidentally started a bookkeeping business as part of that, got hundreds of clients signed up. We had a recruiting business. Like we had this admin service company, 4 other home service businesses, but I was the minority partner. It just didn't make sense to own such a small chunk of like my thing. And so we exited that to basically restart. And when I restarted, I was like, man, this is, and you can already tell because of the way that I am, like, I was like, this has to be just totally me, totally my jam. Like we're going to have fun. We're going to work our asses off. That's how I do it. That's how I hunt. That's how I fish. We're just going to work our butts off and have a shit ton of fun while we do it. But there's got to be an end in mind. And this is funny for a finance guy to say, but to me, it's not about money. It's about like building something that helps everybody else. Money's a result. Like money will happen. And I tell our team that all the time. Like we don't need to be profitable so that Dan makes money. That's not why we need to be profitable. We need to be profitable because you all want opportunities. You all want to make more money. You all want to elevate yourselves. And if we just sit still and stay right where we're at, there's nowhere for you to go. So we need to grow because you want to grow. You have hopes and dreams. And if we don't build the business to satisfy your hopes and dreams, then you're going to leave. What a shitty business to be a part of. So like by default, we have to grow. And by default, if we grow, we're going to be making money, or why the hell would we grow a thing that doesn't make money that can't pay us more in the future? So like we're in this, right? But my pipe dream, and I don't know if you deal with this or you have experience with it, but I don't care about like how big of an exit that I get. It'll be enough. Like the business will be big enough that it'll be enough. And so it's very appealing to me to do an ESOP and sell it back to the people that helped me build it and let them carry it forward. And I used to work for a company called Cargill, which was one of the biggest private companies in the US. Them and like Coke Industries trade spots in terms of like which one is the biggest private company, and it's owned by the employees. It was an ESOP. And I've like been a part and been in like mastermind groups with other companies that had ESOP. And I just think culturally it's cool. That's the type of guy that I am, like the vibe that I am. I'm not just like, let me go make as much money as possible. I'm like, who can I bring along on this ride that would fit like being on this bus and where we're going? Have you messed with that? Do you get other people coming to you and say like, this is a thing I want to do? How the hell do I do it? And what's the discount? I assume you don't get the same level of exit if you're going to ESOP. I assume you eat some of it for the better of all. How does that compare to if you sold to private equity or something like that? Like what is the reasonable expectation if you ESOP?
Actually, not always. I've seen quite a few. Actually, one of the first things I ask with a lot of folks is, do you want to sell to a third party? They automatically think that there's quite a few options for you. So the first question should be, do you want to sell the business or do you want to shut it down? If you want to sell the business, do you want to do an internal transfer to one key employee or maybe a family member? Because those are probably the next two. And then if the answer is no there, then ESOP might be your best. And then finally, if none of those work, then okay, we can talk about all the third party options. But yeah, I'm the same way. Like I've been involved with a few that have worked out really well, but the key there is the management and the passion and what you already mentioned, where that there's culturally a solid fit. Now, I will say you can achieve partial ESOPs or hybrid models for smaller companies if the cost does not make sense, because generally with an ESOP, it takes at least 12 to 18 months to implement, and you have to have a very specific structure and it's expensive. So
what, like in my mind, it's $250,000 is the number I have in my head that it would cost us. But that's just a number that I like heard somewhere somehow.
That's fairly, it's usually between 250 and 500K roughly for an ESOP. So most ESOPs are 10 million plus in enterprise value is what they call it. So, it can make a ton of sense, or you can structure it similarly like an ESOP and still accomplish somewhat similar goals. And it's not technically an ESOP, but I completely think that if it was me, that's what I'd be thinking about immediately with any type of business I'm a part of, because I think it's really cool. And you can also participate in the upside. So a lot of times you can sell it for the same amount if not more, over time, and it's tax advantage from the seller perspective. So, there's really not any downside except for if you think the management team is going to run the company into the ground. So, if you've already put enough money aside and addressed the risk part that we talked about earlier, then and you already have enough and you sell 20, 40, 60% of it out of the gate or pretty quickly, then if the company doesn't continue on, which it probably will, because it probably is a great company and the management is awesome, then you're fine either way. So it's one of those things where I think it's easy to talk about, but you do have to think about all the preparation and work that goes into that, and make sure it's structured appropriately. So
what would be the risk of ESOPing? Is it like, oh, we ESOPed it, I didn't get all my money, contrary to like if you sold it to a third party and they just paid you or had a finance loan, now the risk transferred to them. With an ESOP is like if the business goes downhill, whether it's the management team or just economics or something else at play, if the business tanks, does your exit go away or does part of it go away? How does that play out?
Yeah, the risk is that a lot of decisions are poorly made. The riskiest thing I would say is let's use 10 million as an example. Let's say you sell 50% of it out of the gate to the entity, the ESOP. And so you're taking 5 million out of the gate. Now you have 5 million plus you have your tax bill. So if that's not enough to fulfill your next chapter, whether that's retirement or whatever, then you're at a higher risk or generally speaking. And if you set 10% sold over the next 5 years, so it's a 6-year plan or whatever you decide, then maybe you only get 50 to 60%. And if that company specifically, if it's in manufacturing, they start buying a ton of equipment because they're going to go into heavy automation mode. And then now they have a ton of debt associated with the company. And then all of a sudden things tank or the market changes. And then you're like, oh shit, like we have an issue here. We have all this debt that we have to pay off. And then the company's not worth anything. And then their cash flow is restricted. And then, now your stock's worth nothing. And you may actually be on the hook for some of the risk there if it's not structured properly. So it can go the other direction quickly. But if I was going to do an ESOP, I would, I live, fairly, reasonably. Like I don't really have a whole lot that I need to live. I just love basic parts of life. And so, I would probably
got to have a 30-06, got to have a 12 gauge, got to have a couple fishing poles. Good to go.
Yeah. So I would just pick that amount and make sure I get that amount just to cover my own butt. But then like, hey, let's share the wealth with the people that helped me build it. And then from there, I think they'll take care of it well, and I'll still be involved for a while. But, if it doesn't go well, like this professional service is very different than what I just gave an example of manufacturing where, there's a heavy CapEx and like debt load that could possibly be associated. So that's how I would do it if it was me, but everyone's going to approach it a little bit differently. And then that way, if it does go downhill, you're still good. But to your point, the profit is necessary to bring those benefits and other things back for quality of life. Like you think about Google back in the day, like do people love going to Google because they were making a ton of money? Yes, that was a byproduct, but they loved it because of the culture and the purpose they were doing. They were doing something innovative and awesome. So like, I completely agree with that sentiment.
What is there to do an ESOP? Is there like a minimum level where if you're less than a certain dollar amount of profit or a certain dollar amount of revenue or a certain number of like managerial employees that are running the business that don't even mess with it? Like where do you feel there's a threshold there?
Yeah, the general rule of thumb is that 10 million that I gave that example. So I would say you can do it for less and you can do it for significantly more, but yeah, you're going to want at least, 1 to 1.5 in profit, I would say, and probably around 10 million in value roughly. But there's, like I said, there's ways to accomplish it without actually being officially an ESOP as well.
What can you hit on that? Like how would you do it? And if it's too open-ended, big of a question, tell me, shut up, Dan. But like, how would you go about it? I'm not familiar.
Yeah, you would essentially structure it the same way, except it wouldn't have the same setup costs, So the way an ESOP works is you're essentially borrowing against yourself in a way, and you're using a lender. And so there's a couple steps And if you look at a flow chart, if you want to look it up, then it kind of helps with that. But you can kind of simulate that with a smaller company, but you're taking the risk as the seller a little bit more. And so you don't necessarily have to convert to a C Corp to do it. And, you can do an S Corp or C Corp, and you can look at it from a different perspective there. But you could essentially just sell it in chunks to the management company. You could also fund part of that acquisition as the seller for your management team, and create incentives through ghost equity and a few other things. So, for example, you could set metrics like, hey, we need to hit X, Y, and Z. And when we do, I'll sell a portion of this for a discounted strike price of X, Y, and Z. And when you hit that amount, you know that your company is worth a lot more as the seller. And then the management team knows, like, oh, I'm getting a massive discount on this. I helped build this. So you can create a bunch of different like tiers and structures that simulates an ESOP in a way, and then effectively transfer ownership to them long term. So you're sharing on the upside basically, and mitigating risk. And you can also offload a bunch of the cash proceeds up front, where you could work with a lender and have them buy a big chunk of it and have it sitting there so that you do get your initial proceeds on the front end. So very similar to how an ESOP would work, but just structured a little bit more simple. Actually, I just made it sound more complex, but it's actually simpler.
that like you mentioned, like borrowing money, is it the business basically borrowing money to buy out the owner, and then the business has the interest on that loan to fund a portion of the buyout of the owner, and the rest just like rolls through the ESOP from the profitability of the business? Is that like a high level way of explaining?
Yeah. High level, you're taking the assets and value of the company and letting the management team borrow against it in a way, and therefore helps them fund purchasing the stock of the company, and therefore can be done in chunks, which is generally better for tax purposes too. So there's a lot of like added benefits to it. And then the cool thing is you can set, like I said, those metrics like, hey, if we hit these things, high level, then I'm going to do it. Like, let's go into go mode and execution mode, and we have a unified goal. So I think that's one of the things that a lot of business owners could do better. And I know I could have when I was running my business, was just pick a couple basic things and just pound it into the employees and your team's heads, like every week. Like, we're trying to accomplish this for this reason, and when we do, it means this for you. Like, just full circle flywheel kind of stuff. And a lot of times people are questioning, like, why are we doing this again? Like, well, if it all ties back to the company goals, which then is tied to their compensation, which is tied to growth of the company, which means better benefits, which means better quality of life, which means, so it just generally works a lot better. So I think that's one of the things that's pretty cool about setting company-wide goals and keeping it simple. The more you go, the crazier it gets, and then less people, they get it all, it's all muddled. So
Yep. What you mentioned taxes a couple times, and I'm curious, is there if somebody's thinking about exiting, what are the tax bullet points for the person selling that they should be thinking about setting up in advance, prioritizing, timing, whatever, structure of a deal to be tax advantaged as best as possible?
Yeah. So most people, when they think of tax, they think of a CPA. Realistically, what you should be thinking about, CPAs are generally looking in arrears and looking backwards. And so they'll help with a lot of things there, but you generally need more of a tax attorney or a financial advisor, which sounds kind of odd, but they work with a lot of very specialized tax attorney teams. So usually, if it's easier, actually, and that's why I work with a lot of financial advisors, if you talk to the financial advisor, they already know your full financial plan, and then they go do the work for you with the tax attorney, and it's rolled into their fee. So you're not really paying for it at the same level as if you went out and tried to find them anyway. So the thing that you want to mitigate is your ordinary income, which is what you're generating from the business itself. So if you're making a couple $100,000 on the business, okay, that's great. But let's say you have a surplus of cash above your standard of living. So let's say you're making $300K in the business and you only need 150 to pay your bills and do all the things you want with your family. You got 150K in surplus. Like, is it efficient to throw it into an IRA and do a tax deduction through that, a qualified plan? Is it better to buy an insurance product or is it better to do a hybrid? Or there's also things called tax loss harvesting, where essentially you're banking capital gains losses in preparation to have a massive capital gains gain when you sell the business. So like you can tackle all these ahead, and the key is starting early. So as an example, same example, if you're throwing 150K at generating these tax losses, it'll still grow at the same level as the S&P. And then so there is no downside. And then when you go to sell your business for $2 million and you got $1.5 million in capital gains, you're only paying tax on 500K versus $1.5 million. So like there's a lot of really cool things you can do that you can effectively. I've seen some people defer taxes 100%. They didn't pay a single penny when they sold their business. They deferred it all and kicked it down the road, and then did some other stuff. So, or if you have real estate, like if you own a building, you could do a 1031 exchange. Same thing. It's the same concept. So those are the things that take time, and you got to think about it from a holistic perspective to really implement properly. So it's one of those things where, if you're proactive, you can do some cool stuff.
I get asked. So like with our bookkeeping clients, we offer tax services. We have an EA on our team. We have a tax assistant that they're both really good at what they do.
Yeah.
But our clients will be like, hey, I need to do a tax strategy call. And I'm like, careful now. What we do, and I try to differentiate this, we do tax tactics, which I wish I had a better way to say that, because saying tax tactics sucks. Just
say it 10 times fast.
Yeah, it's impossible to say. But I'm like, we're looking at what the rules of the IRS are and how we play within those rules to do Augusta rule to depreciate your assets. Like, I'm not going to go tell you to buy a bunch of shit in the last week of December, like, and tell you to go broke saving money. We're not that tax person. Like, we're more strategic than that. But I'm going to like make sure our team doesn't say, oh, you should be out doing a 1030 whatever that James said and go buy some property, or you should go invest in oil exploration because that's tax advantage. Like, you don't want your tax preparer to be your financial advisor in what you should be investing in to save money on taxes. That is not the role of your tax preparer. They can implement it, but they shouldn't be the strategist. That is bigger than them. That is your personal financial plan, and you need a financial advisor that understands the tax laws as well, and your risk aversion and what you're passionate about and what you want to invest in, and that tax picture of all those things. Then your tax preparer can be the one executing it, but your tax preparer should not be recommending financial investments for tax saving strategies, in my opinion. Like, I try to coach people through that all the time. Like, I think I get put under this where people like think that we're doing bookkeeping so they can get their taxes done. And I'm like, no, we do bookkeeping so you can run your business better. Like, you hear the word bookkeeping, you think you hear the word bookkeeping and you think it's something that needs to be done for tax purposes. I'm like, no, the tax person can do your taxes with bank statements and a box full of receipts. They don't need bookkeeping. They prefer to have it because doing taxes without it sucks, but they don't need it to do their job. Bookkeeping is for you. So you know what your COGS is. So you know what your marketing percentage is. So you know where you're at for overhead, and you're not running your business like a dumbass. Like, it's a managerial tool. It's not a tax tool. But so many people construe it as just like, oh, it's just accounting. It's all accounting. Then I got to get in the face and tell them what's up.
Yeah, it's just like one of those. Have you ever had one of those cheese balls? They're just kind of for snacking at like a party. They're just lumping it all into one big cheese ball is what it feels like. But
when you said cheese balls, I went right to the Target bin of like the $10 bin.
Oh, okay.
Like 12,000 little cheese balls. You're going with the soft cheese ball that you dip a cracker in. That's
yes.
Soft cheese. The ones you throw into your buddy's mouth when he passed out, and you're like, hey, think I can get it? Yeah, just drop it in there. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. No,
both delicious. I like
100%. Yeah. No, I 100% agree. Yeah. Bookkeeping is meant to make meaningful decisions better to operate your business. Like, it's super important. So I completely agree with that. And your EA or your CPA, or a lot of times the financial advisors or the tax attorneys give the paperwork to the CPA or the EA to file on their behalf. Like, they just give you the plan and then you just go do it. So it's a whole teamwork thing. So it's more of a complementary team than it is a replacement. From my experience, and then everyone just kind of specializes in the different areas, but there's so many different angles to it. And I think a lot of people just kind of lump it all into one.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
for whatever reason.
Yeah. So like, as you're going down this path, you mentioned this earlier, and I kind of want to bring this back and wrap up with it. If somebody's like getting into, hey, I'm interested in selling, when's the right time to come and talk to you? Do they wait until they're doing a certain level of millions of dollars of revenue, or do you interact with them sooner and try to like help coach them to get there? What's the right engagement time to like bring somebody in to help them get everything built out the right way to maximize an exit plan?
Well, I'm naturally hardwired to help, so I would say now because I love talking about this stuff and I love helping people and I want people to have as much information as possible. And I really am good at and enjoy looking at the picture and saying like, hey, this is how I think it should work. We'll work through that whole process. So in my opinion, if you're 20 years out, still give me a call and we'll talk it through and I'll give you some pointers and we can be very hands-on or it can be very passive. It does not matter. But in my opinion, starting earlier, it statistically is astounding how much more successful folks are with an exit plan when they start earlier. Obviously that sounds a little self-serving, but it worked for me. It's worked for all the clients that I've worked with. I just think it's so important, and it naturally fits in with what you guys do. Like it's so easy and complimentary that I just think that earlier the better is always helpful. And worst case, I can at least point you in the right direction or give you a few pointers short term, and then reconvene in every quarter, every year. What does not matter, but the point is that there's a few correlations with every successful exit plan, and the first one is 85% of best-in-class exits are based on education. The next one is they start more than 2 years in advance. The next one is they've decided and talked about what they're going to do after they sell, talked about the personal side. And then, they've also statistically paid less in taxes if they've gone through that. So it's just one of those things where sooner the better, frankly. And so, but if someone's looking to make a lot of progress, like Usain Bolt down the track, then 2 to 3 years is perfect because it's enough time to prepare and make some massive impacts very, very quick. So I would say that's the shortest time frame, but 2 to 5 is kind of the sweet spot, if that answers your question.
Yeah. Do you find yourself almost like playing CFO for them, like trying to help them organize stuff or make certain decisions? And given that, what is the thing that when you dive in, you're like, oh man, we should change the way you pay employees, or we should change how you train or your training systems? Like, obviously I assume it's custom to each business because it depends what they got going on, but what is a common theme that you run into when you dive in with somebody? For me, it's balance sheets. Nobody's looking at their damn balance sheet. Like the minute we jump in, I'm like, I'm going to scrub your balance sheet and tell you all the shit that is effed up in your books. But what is the balance sheet in your world? What's the thing that you always run into is wacky?
Oh yeah. It's absolutely the forward thinking projection based, me leveraging the prior experience with being a fractional CFO. It's the easiest thing for me to go through because it makes the most sense. It can add the most value, but and it can leverage all the information that's already been built from a foundational bookkeeping perspective. So that's what I love doing because it makes a big difference very quickly. So that would be generally the most meaningful thing to leverage right out of the gate for sure. And the other thing is, just it's implementing KPIs through like the CRM and things like that, which is similar to that, but just kind of leveraging any of the data and tech that's available and not getting too mired into too many things at once. Simpler is always better. So that going back to the comp thing you mentioned too, it's very interesting whenever you look at, okay, this is how the sales team is working and this is how the ops team is working. And this is how our KPIs are set up, or maybe they have no KPIs. And then the compensation doesn't make sense to bring the team together. It actually creates conflict. Like, okay, well, why don't we align all of this? So that makes a lot more sense. So to answer your question, I look at absolutely everything and talk about all of it and kind of break it down from and rebuild it if we need to. But if things are working, there's no reason to. It's just more of let's build upon what's already been successful about the business and go from there.
Oh yeah. What is there anything we didn't cover Like, oh, Dan, you dumbass, you forgot to ask me about X, Y, and Z because this is super important for small business owners. Like, what ground haven't we shaken up yet? Scratched up, we're like turkeys going around pawing it up, looking for.
Oh yeah. Well, just like building a house, for me, I always come back to the physical world. I think that's I just like the idea of building things. You see what you get done. And with a business, sometimes it's hard to see some of that stuff when you're working so much during the day. So for me, the foundational piece with anything is just getting a business valuation, because if you know what your business is worth today, and then you know how much you need to sell it for, at least generally what you think you need to sell it for, and you talk to your financial advisor, or if you don't have one, you can get one, then you at least know what's called that's a value gap, or your so if your business is worth $500K and you sell it for $2 million, you got $1.5 million to close, and then you just overlay it on the timeline. So the business valuation from a credible source is a huge thing. So that's one thing that I would say.
Do you guys do that, or have people that you use to do valuations like that?
Yeah, we do it in-house. We do what's called broker opinion of values, BPOs, or business valuations, which is basically the lowest cost, high value valuation you can do, because we're going through more high level to medium level with the detail. Mm-hmm. And then if someone needs a certified valuation, which is expensive, then we can go that route. But why not start from a basic perspective? So we're not certified to do that, but those are generally $3 to $10 grand a pop, which I don't think is worth it, especially for small business owners. If you're just trying to establish hey, where do I think I am?
Yeah.
We don't need to go to a certified appraisal for, just like with a real estate thing. So it's, we'll give you your Zestimate, I guess is my point, with decent accuracy.
I have one thing I forgot to ask about that we danced around this a little bit earlier, but I didn't bring it up at the time, and then I lost it until now. How so many small business owners are running some personal stuff through, and some that's kind of personal and kind of business. My fish house is on our balance sheet as a remote office. I work from it all the time. I got Starlink for it. I do a ice fishing trip with clients of mine. How does stuff obviously if we sell our business, I'm not selling the fish house along with it. Buy back from the business or whatever it is. How do those owner things come into play when you're selling a small business? Because I assume every other owner is doing what I see in all the clients I work with, is that they've got not necessarily commingled, but they're running certain things through the business. Is it just as simple as adjusting that stuff out, or calling it owner's comp, or how do you deal with that sort of thing?
So there's different tiers in that regard. And so things that banks would accept are the highest tier. So that would be, your W-2 wages. So when you go through a valuation, you're taking your profit, and then you are adding add backs, and then you're subtracting adjustments to produce your adjusted EBITDA, or SDE, seller discretionary earnings. And then we're kind of going through a nuanced look at multiples within your industry and benchmarking and all this other stuff, and then looking at it from a couple different valuation methodologies. But to boil it down, if the bank will accept it, then you don't have to change anything. The cleanest example there is W-2 wages, because it's provable. You have a W-2, you can see it plain as day. And then the other side of that is somewhat what you mentioned. You have personal expenses that, you might be able to pull that detail. The best thing you can do if you want to put minimal effort is you have a specific account, and it's just a detailed report you can print, and maybe you're writing it off, and that's your choice. However, there's other ways to do it. You're getting a 6-to-1 ROI by not reporting it as an expense. So some folks will choose to eat the tax bill for a year or two, knowing
personally, so it inflates your net income and improves your multiple.
Exactly. So if you strategically know your exit window, you could eat that tax bill. Or there's some folks that will create, and no, I'm not giving you tax advice right now, but some folks will create a second entity, a management company, and they effectively will charge their primary business a management fee, and they'll write off a lot of those type of expenses within the management entity
Yep.
separately. Yep. I would not recommend going with the Schedule C because their audit risk is through the roof. S Corp, C Corp, partnerships are significantly lower, less than it's very, very low on the audit level there. So if it was me, I would have a management company and I would just have that sitting there. And whether you have one business or 10, you run through all those things that might be a little ambiguous through there. You're going to have a better, you're still getting the benefit of the tax write-off is what I'm getting at. And then you're not devaluing the core business that we're talking about today. So that's how I would do it. But a lot of times it's not worth it if it's a small.
Yeah, it's a lot of around. If you're doing 500,000 and you have a separate management company, it's a whole lot of dicking around to save a couple grand.
Yeah, the juice isn't worth the squeeze in that case. So I just be careful with what you're doing and too fast. Like some folks will talk to, they're like, all right, I'm going to buy 3 companies and I'm going to set them up like X, Y, and Z out of the gate. And I'm like, just start simple. You can add layers as you go. So just be careful with all the different layers and all the costs and the tax filings and the additional K1s and all this other stuff. Mm-hmm. You're adding complexity when you don't need to.
Right on, man. Well, I got to get to bed. I got to get up at like 3:30 in the morning.
Geez.
I'm on Central Time, but I'm flying to Eastern Time, and then I got a podcast or 2 to do tomorrow. Otherwise, now is when we got to start telling hunting stories. But we're just gonna have to do this again and hang out. And I probably need you to do like a little exit plan action for Best Damn Bookkeeping coming up once we get out of our busy season. It's been just crazy this spring. I need to take a break. I got this runway first week of June. I'm going to the Boundary Waters. Justin mentioned it in his thing, catching some walleyes in the canoe. No cell reception. Rob, how's the beer? Rob is coming with. That's my exit strategy right now. Is I'm gonna exit my business for a week where nobody can find me. Once we get out of the gauntlet of the busy season, I'm excited for the first week of June. But then we need to reconvene, tell some hunting, fishing stories. Are you getting out to Erie at all? You got any plans to hit Erie in the springtime here?
I don't have anything set in stone, but I'll probably, I don't know at this point. Well, I don't have anything set in stone, but I got a couple things that I'm trying to get done, but we'll see. But same thing. Things have been kind of crazy, and you guys probably even more than me, but we'll see.
I got podcast stuff to do tomorrow, and then Thursday, Friday, I'm meeting up with an HVAC client of ours outside of Detroit, and I think we're hitting St. Clair. We're doing a little business meeting on the boat, and maybe ripping some walleyes or smallies. We'll see. Whatever's biting, I would assume is what we're going to be catching, in a couple bottle bass.
Awesome. That sounds amazing, man. So
should be good. All right, man. Well, thanks for hanging out. Super good convo. We could go all freaking night, but
for sure.
We'll just do a round 2 here when we get around to it. And I would love to personally about Best Damn Bookkeeping chat more about what our exit plan is and when we should ESOP and how we should look at that and what it would cost, all that stuff. I have ideas in my mind, but they're just my stupid ass ideas. I've never talked to somebody that actually knows what they're talking about. So we should do that, man.
Oh yeah, that'd be super cool. We could either do it from a verbal perspective, or we could put some on the screen too. So anything you want to do.
Hell yeah. All right, business nerds, you guys know what to do. Work smarter and harder. Go earn some pride. We'll see y'all next week. Thanks, James. You the man, dude.
Right back at you.